Live on WFLA Now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gayle Guayardo.
All right, everybody,
welcome
to the Bloom Health Club. This is a topic that's going to resonate with a lot of folks because so many Americans have been through a divorce, and some of it, for some of you, the few, it went smoothly, but for many, after breakup and divorce, Sara Davison. Sara, it is such a pleasure to have you officially a member of the Bloom Health Club.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
So I think this is so great. You were so kind and gracious. You've joined us on Bloom, which is our talk show syndicated and headquartered here in Tampa, Florida. And I don't think I've ever met anyone that specializes in helping you transition through a breakup.
I don't think there really is anyone else that does this. And that's why I started this, because when I went through my own breakup, my divorce, I thought, gosh, where is the help? Because there's so many things that you need help with. And heartbreak is something we all go through, right? It's not something that, it's a one-off thing. A lot of us go through it more than once as well. So it's something that affects everyone on the planet. And I was really shocked by how much it floored me.
Yeah, and it's such an emotional journey going through a divorce because you're dealing with finances, many times you're dealing with children, and then you are also in a place of pain. Yeah. So it's like doubling down on the trauma. So tell me about your book and how it helps people.
Well, I think the important thing is to know that we can control how we feel. And I think most people say to me, Sara, I feel really bad because my partner's left me, because I don't know what's coming up next. I'm overwhelmed, I'm scared, I'm devastated. And I know those things are real and I've been there. So I really get the ugly crying on the bathroom floor, all that. The interesting thing, though, is that we're not taught this at school. We're not taught these life skills that when you go through a trauma, and it could be anything, but obviously I'm specializing in breakup, you can take your power back by dialing down your own emotions. So you can choose how you react to some of those really difficult emotions. And that's what I'm helping people to do. And that's what the book's designed to do, is to really help people take their control back and say, you know what, I know this is hard. And maybe it's betrayal, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's anger or even rage, which I see quite a lot with some clients. But the thing is, yes, you have a choice. You can either drag those negative emotions into the future with you and they become like a lead weight or a gray cloud, and you can never really truly be happy if you're holding on to all that. The thing is, we need to do the work. We need to look at ourselves, and then the other side you can decide is to say, I'm going to do the work and I'm going to put this behind me. And my motto was always, screw you, watch this. And turning that pain into your power can be one of the most rewarding, fulfilling things you can do. So that's what the book's about. It's about showing you how you can survive and thrive after a divorce. And it doesn't have to be a negative, not only for you, but also for the children as well.
That's good to know. That is good to know. So, people in marriages, sometimes you just know a divorce is looming. You know it's just not working and that it's inevitable. But for others, they're completely caught off guard by divorce. They can't believe it's happened. Like, that he just up and left me, or she just up and left me. So do you see the same pain regardless of what the situation is, or does it differ?
I think there's still pain. I mean, divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one. And I think some people going into it think, oh, well, it's fizzled out and we've grown apart. And I think, that pain is not as sharp as finding out your partner's been cheating on you and they've been dishonest. I think that is a real pain that is probably more painful than just a relationship fizzling out. But even when it fizzles out, doesn't mean there isn't any pain, because adjusting to living two separate lifestyles, it leaves a whole gap in your life. So again, you've got to learn to readjust. And there's other things that will trouble you. It might not be the heartache, but it might be more like the loneliness or learning to be independent. A lot of people are very scared and frightened of being on their own. They know they don't want to be with their ex, but being on their own is also scary. So I think it's a great question, because it's two very different scenarios, but there is quite a lot of pain with both. But I would probably say that going through that betrayal having been through that myself, I know how painful that is.
Very, very painful. All right. So let's talk about, you said I wanted to write in my book things that I wish I knew when I was going through my own divorce. Yeah. What are some of those things?
Well, I think I didn't know anything about it. I mean, my divorce hit me like a freight train. I didn't see it coming. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't 100% happy, but I thought marriage was for life, and I believed that we could work through any issues that we had. So when I found out that my husband was madly in love with somebody else, it completely floored me, and my son was only 1. And at that point, you're extremely emotionally vulnerable because you're going through the shock. You're probably in a bit of denial. You're also having to tell all your friends, all your family, my whole life has changed. And, it's humiliating, it's embarrassing. So again, I think when you're going through all of that, and I also worked with my ex, so there were a lot of different parts to it. And I just wish there was something that would show me what to do. And so many people say to me now, I need a step-by-step guide. I don't just want to go and talk about it, because I tried therapy, and there's a place for therapy, and there's some great therapists out there. But I didn't leave with a plan, and nobody was saying, okay, well, this is normal, but what you need to look out for is this, this, and this. And no one was talking about the pitfalls that we see, and no one was talking about how you can handle those pitfalls and how you adjust to that. So one of the things I decided to do was to create a guide, a handbook, to help everybody through those really difficult parts. How to choose a lawyer, how to manage your own emotions, how to care for your child, how to stay amicable with your ex as far as is possible, and not pass any of that negativity onto your child is very hard to do. And one of the things a lot of the parents I see, the single parents, that's one of the biggest pain points for them. And how not to see your child every day. We don't have children to not put them to bed every night. And I think that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to manage. So I try and cover all those pain points in the book so that I can really help people with all those different issues. I've walked in their shoes, so I know exactly how bad it can be, but you're never alone, and there's always help. And that's what I tried to capture with the book.
When clients come to you, is there a common denominator thread that people have questions or just tremendous hurdles in dealing with?
Yeah, and one of the biggest questions I get asked actually is, when am I going to start feeling better, Sara? When does this stop? And the answer to that is really simple, actually. It's when you decide. And we can all decide when to make that shift, like that decision. Do I drag this with me, or do I step up and do something about it? And I think that's the key here. It's working out, how to do it. And I think there's a lot of people struggling and flailing. And maybe we talk to friends, and some friends are great, but quite often they've got a vested emotional interest as well. They're angry with your ex. They're hurt on your behalf, but also maybe on their behalf. There's parents that get, welcome them into the family. There's people that have sort of loved them as you have, and now they're not there anymore. So there can be anger. So again, it's choosing who you talk to about those different things as well, and how you make sure that you're protecting yourself when you're making those decisions, that they are the best decisions, not keeping you stuck.
Do you talk about forgiveness as far as a way to heal? Because I think, for a lot of people, they can't just let it go, and then they can't move on.
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting topic, forgiveness, and it is a very personal thing for a lot of people. For me, I think that some clients find that there are things that are not forgivable. So if you're coming out of a toxic relationship, if there's been abuse or there's been certain behaviors, some people find that really hard. But actually, it's all about not really forgiveness. It's more about giving yourself permission to let go and move on. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that trap of waiting to have a conversation or to get that closure from their ex. And that's really hard to do, because your ex, quite often, if they are a kind person, you've just sort of grown apart, they don't want to upset you. They don't want to tell you, well, actually, I fell out of love with you, because they know that's going to hurt you even more. So the answers you get don't usually give you closure. And the toxic, abusive ex, well, that's going to be incredibly painful and probably not true anyway. So again, that is kind of a dead end to go looking for closure from your ex. And the person that hurt you cannot heal you. That has to come from you. So looking for that closure has to come from inside you, recognizing that their lack of respect was the closure. Their lack of kindness was the closure. Their lack of apology was the closure. Their lack of capability to keep your heart safe was the closure. So looking at what went wrong and saying, you know what, I don't need to hear that from you, because my boundaries of what is acceptable behavior for me from a partner, that's not it. And I cannot tolerate that in my life. So I'm going to close the door because I know I deserve more and I'm worth more. That self-worth part, though, is one of the hardest parts to rebuild because your confidence is low, understandably. But just know that is normal and it is a journey. And there are lots of things you can do to rebuild your confidence and your self-esteem. So again, it takes time, but if you're willing to do the work, you can definitely get through it and be stronger.
How do you help people move on and know when it's time to, like, you know what? Maybe I put myself out there again. You know, let me see what the world's got to offer, because the world seems to be kind of scary when it comes to dating and matchmaking and finding that next person and trusting in love again.
Yeah, and I think that is a really scary thing. And it's normal to be scared of dating after you've been hurt, especially because you're thinking, I don't want to go through that pain again. So I hear a lot, I'm never dating again, or I hate all the opposite sex or the same sex. It's just you get that kind of feeling. And that is your body's protection mechanism from stopping you from getting hurt again. And I think that's the key thing to understand. It's not that you truly don't want love and connection, because that is everyone's number one human need. As humans, that's what we crave. So getting that love and connection from dating, you can do it. And it's about building in safety nets. Now, how do we build in safety nets is a good question, because it's doing the work, thinking and learning the lessons from what went wrong in this. And what can I learn? So it's not just what you want from a partner that you're thinking about, which, to be honest, is what most people will look for. Tall, dark, handsome, or short, blonde, blue eyes, whatever it is, that's what people know. We know what we're physically attracted to, which is important. But more important is, what do I need from my partner? And that's the bit you've learned from the past if you look and you do the work. So it might be that you need someone who's emotionally intelligent, or somebody that is capable of, cheering you up when you need it, or somebody that can, have their own financial independence, or get on really well with your kids. What is it that you really need from a partner? And combining that with what you want is the secret. But then to stop yourself repeating negative patterns, we also need to look at what you must not have. And these are things that you will never, ever tolerate again. They're deal breakers. So if they show up, what I call deploy your parachute and exit immediately. There's no, but I can probably change him when he or her. When they get to know me, it's going to be okay. This is a safety net for a reason, to protect you. So what we want to do is make sure if any of those red flags come up, you are out immediately. Then with that in place, it's easier to go on dates, because for example, I had a client who said, right, I can't bear my partner to be rude, because her ex-boyfriend was very rude, and that was one of her things. So kindness was really high on her list, and respect. And she went on a first date, and she messaged me afterwards and said, it was great. We went for a drink. It was so good. I'm really excited about this one. She said he's invited me out for dinner. So they went out the following week for dinner. And during that meal, he was incredibly rude to the waiting staff. He was clicking his fingers. He was sending food back and just being rude about it. And she was dying inside, because she knew that was something that was on her list of must not haves. And then at the end of the date, and she's quite a sweet person, sweet-natured, so she didn't want to say anything, but he walked her back to the car. And then there was that awkward moment where he went in to kiss her, and she was like, no, I'm really sorry. And she took a step back and said, I can't do this. You're not for me. I'm sorry, I can't see you again. And she got in her car and she drove home. But she messaged me and she said, I think I might have made a mistake. And so we spoke, and I said, well, why? And she said, well, it just, I've put a boundary down and I feel good about it. But, what happens if he might have changed? But actually, they don't change. And this was a really powerful thing. And she was really glad in the end, because it turned out that he did have a bit of a history of not treating people very kindly.
That is good. And good to look for those signals early, as you say. When we talk about healing from a broken heart, do you talk to clients that are like, they just, even though their ex has moved on, they can't, because they just can't let go of the love and the devotion for that person.
Yeah. And that's so common. And it's okay to still love somebody, but it doesn't mean that it's the right person for you, even if they come back, by the way, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, time's gone by and they've come back. But I always think that if somebody comes back to you, then they're coming back because they realize you're worth them, because they've missed you. However, you deserve someone who recognizes your worth when you're with them, not enough to lose you and then come back for you. So I think that's really important to think about. I think it's really key to know what you're worth. And also, your love is a gift and it's wrapped up in a whatever package it is, and you gave it to somebody and they didn't know what to do with it. And that's not necessarily a reflection on you. That might be a reflection on the fact that they have wounds that haven't healed and they're incapable of connecting with you. There are certain attachment types in relationships that show that. So there's three main ones. There's the secure attachment, which is when you like somebody, you're going to go for it. You're going to say, yeah, I understand there's a risk, but I'm going to go for it because I really like this and I want more of it. Then you've got the anxious attachment. And these are people who, want a lot of reassurance, needy in a relationship, like need to know that they're, do I look good? Am I okay? Do you love me? Are we still okay? You're going to phone me. Where are you going tonight? They're the kind that are going to be stalking you on your social media as well.
Right.
And then you've got the avoidance. Now, these are interesting because that stems usually from a childhood trauma. So what that demonstrates in is that manifests in is that they crave the intimacy, and they may really be into you as well. This is the confusing thing. They can, maybe introduce you to their family, be super kind, and there's a connection there. But when it comes down to intimacy or commitment, they can't do it, because what happened in their childhood is they didn't have a healthy enough relationship attachment with their parent. So either it was chaotic, or maybe they were abandoned or rejected by a parent, or they just never really got that love. So that hasn't formed. So therefore, they are terrified of being abandoned or rejected. So what happens is they do it to you before you can do it to them. And that actually doesn't mean that they don't value you, or they don't care about you, they don't find you attractive. And I see a lot of clients saying, they can't find me attractive and there's something wrong with me. But with those type of personality types, with that attachment style, it's not that at all. They really do care in most cases. It's just they're incapable because their wounds haven't healed. And if someone's wounds haven't healed and they haven't taken the time to heal, and you can heal those avoidant attachments, you can heal those wounds with therapy and a lot of work. It's not straightforward, but you can do it. The thing is, it makes you anxious. If you're a secure person in a relationship with an avoidant, you become anxious because you're like, well, do you like me? Are you coming over? Why are you suddenly leaving? I thought we were getting on great and now you're going home. What's going on? So it does make you feel insecure and anxious. So it's not healthy for either party. And what we find is that avoidant types tend to find familiarity with the anxious because they thrive off that chaos because it's familiar. And their secure attachment scares them because it's asking for that commitment and intimacy that they probably really crave but are unable to give. So we quite often see the anxious and the avoidant together.
So you actually work with people on their attachment styles and what can work best for them, or who they should be looking for?
Yeah, I think it's important. I'm not a psychologist, I'm a coach. So it's important to understand these things though, because I see a lot of clients who have are in this sort of, they've gone through a divorce, especially if they've been in a cycle. And this is really interesting, actually. Then if you've dated an abusive partner, there is a really toxic, unhealthy loop. Well, they'll suck you in by being this called love bombing, and you feel amazing, and they make you feel $1 million, and they'll put you on a pedestal. And then the confusing behavior starts, so the gaslighting, and you don't really know what's going on. And the unkind comments or the pure evil actions at times can then really hurt, and then it will explode into some sort of argument or worse. And then what happens is they hoover you back in because they feel you pulling away, but they need that control. So as soon as you start to pull away, they want more of you coming back in. So they hoover you back in, and then you think, oh, well, you know what? It's good now. They're being amazing. And this is what I remember because at the beginning it was so good. So you stay in that cycle. Now, interestingly, I have a lot of clients that come out of toxic relationships that then go into relationships with avoidant personalities. Now, avoidants aren't nasty, unkind people, but the cycle is very same. It's similar because they're hot, cold behavior. So one minute they can be like all over you, and the next minute they're like, oh no, I can't do this. And a lot of them don't communicate well about their feelings because they're not really consciously aware of this pattern either. But in my experience, I've done some research recently of my own because I haven't seen anyone else talking about it, but I saw it a lot with my clients, that the narcissistic abuse cycle quite often reflects the avoidance cycle. So as somebody that's empathetic, that's the kind of person that gets into the toxic relationship, you're very easily suckered into another similar pattern. But they're not unkind, and you can work with avoidance. You can't work with the toxic narcissist.
Okay, good to know. Now, you help people, many people, after a breakup. Is there a window of opportunity before the breakup happens where people reach out to you?
Absolutely. And I think, when we think about getting married, we put so much time into it, don't we? And we plan everything from the dress and to the food and to who's sitting next to who, and it takes a long time. I think with a breakup and a divorce, you have that window as well where you notice things are going wrong. You notice the cracks are forming, you notice there's resentments building, and that's the time. It's never too late to save your relationship. I believe it has to be a two-way thing, but you can always start without your partner and watch if they catch up. Because quite often people have checked out, but if they start to see certain behaviors, maybe you become more aware that some of the things you're doing aren't helping, then you can come back together. But yeah, definitely there's a chance.
When you look back at your own personal story, do you have any red flags that you share with others that maybe that you didn't have eyes wide open to?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't really understand that sort of toxic relationship. I never experienced it. My parents have been married for over 50 years. It just wasn't something I'd experienced. So I was very naive. And that's really why I'm on a mission now to help people to deal with this, because I felt so alone and so confused and frustrated and scared actually going through the breakup, because I didn't really understand that, my whole world was falling apart and why. And a lot of people say to me now, I have a training school where I train coaches to become breakup and divorce coaches. And we've trained over 500 coaches now in 24 different countries around the world. And so many people say, Sara, I wish I'd had all this information when I was going through my own divorce, because it would have made such a difference. And the people that are still going through it, when they come on the training, they absolutely love it because they're like, oh, I tried this and I'm doing this and my ex doesn't upset me anymore. And also there's a lot of tools on empowering the kids, which is important too.
You can empower the kids?
Absolutely. So a lot of the tools I teach are about how to dull down your negative emotions, how to change how you feel in a heartbeat. So obviously my son now is nearly 15, actually, it's his birthday soon. And when he was little, obviously I've been doing this for a long time, 30 years I've been coaching. So when he was little, I was teaching him a lot of this stuff by showing him how to do it. And I'll never forget, because you never know if it's going in with little kids, right? But we were driving on the way back from school. I picked him up and he was only 6 years old. And he said, Mummy, I was in the playground today and I was playing with Charlie and we were running around playing tag. He said, Charlie fell over and he hurt his knee and it was bleeding. And it wasn't bad though. And he started crying and he said, oh, I'm not going to be able to play anymore. He said, well, I looked at him, Mummy, and I said, well, just do the thing that cheers you up. You know what just do the thing to cheer yourself up. And he said, Mummy, Charlie looked at me. He said, I don't know what that is. And my son was like, what do you mean you don't know what that is? He said, stand up, put your shoulders back, put a big smile on your face. He said, and if that doesn't work, 5-star jumps, go. He said, Charlie got up and he was doing these moves. And he looked at me, Mummy, and he goes, it really works. And Santi, my son, looked at me and goes, Mummy, didn't even know that. And I was like, yes, it's going in. But, kids can control how they feel. And obviously there's different, as adults, we're not going to stand up necessarily. And
it couldn't hurt.
Yeah, exactly. But, we have slightly more, advanced ways of doing things. But for kids, that's just genius. And it can really help them in that instant change how they feel.
I love that. Well, I think it's outstanding what you're doing. I know you're, reaching people around the world, and we certainly appreciate you coming here to Tampa, Florida, headquarters of not just Bloom, the TV show, but Bloom Health Club. It's always a pleasure seeing you, Sara.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've loved chatting with you.
Absolutely. And once again, the book is Uncoupling, How to Survive and Thrive After a Breakup. and divorce. And if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, we hope you'll share this with your friends, subscribe to us, find us on YouTube. And we're just trying to get the good word out, everyone. Until next week, I'll see you soon.